Hello and welcome to our session today about debunking science stereotypes. My name is Crystal and I'm joined with Louis today and we'll be hosting this event.
Thanks, Crystal. This broadcast is part of our week-long virtual careers fair. We've brought together some of the top employees from the fields of science, technology and engineering, show you lovely people how a career in STEM could be so much more than you ever imagined. We are Springpod, a place for young people to discover their future career.
And today we are joined by Roche, a global leader in healthcare. So over the years, medical and science industry has been rapidly changing, but Roche has been at the forefront making people's lives better.
Yep, today we are going to be exploring the ins and the outs of this industry. We're going to be having our friends at Roche here help us debunk some common scientific misconceptions, and we're going to show you how a passion in numbers can help you get a position in the medical field.
So help me welcome them out. Here we have Nicola, Tom and Beth.
My name's Nicola and I'm a statistical scientist working at Roche.
Hello everybody, my name's Tom Wilgos and I lead our patient-centred outcomes research team in neuroscience at Roche.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a field service engineer within Roche.
Well, thank you all. I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting day.
So help us get a better understanding of what Roche actually does and what their kind of ethos is.
So Roche is a global pharmaceutical and diagnostics company. In the UK, we have a big global office which represents three core aspects of the business. So we have a pharmaceutical element, which involves research and development for new therapeutics, new drugs. We have a diabetes care part of the group, which focuses on managing and helping people with diabetes live their lives. And we have a diagnostics group, which Beth can talk about.
So Roche Diagnostics is about the technology and tests, as well as preventing diseases and being able to manage the patient's healthcare from the point of the test and passing it back to pharmaceutical really to get the right results.
And I mean, obviously, every company has a set way of doing things. What would you say the Roche way is?
So I think Roche's kind of main mission is to follow good science, so to use the science that we're doing to make the next breaks in medicine. The kind of people values that stand behind that allow us to do that are integrity, courage and passion. So in particular, just to touch on the integrity point, we have to ensure that every clinical trial we're doing is open and transparent so that we are very clear in the research that we're doing and ensure that we conduct every single thing that we do in a very ethical way.
And passion means that we have the drive and the energy to really innovate and move the science forward.
While courage is about experimenting and really pushing that every test is correct and you're doing the right thing and kind of standing up and saying, yes, I can do this.
And how do you think Roche is innovating when it comes to the personalised healthcare space?
This is a very good question. I think personalised healthcare is probably coming in as a bit of a new buzzword. Everybody's trying to do it. So the idea behind it is that we can personalise medicines for an individual patient. So we can personalise the treatment based on the characteristics we're seeing in them to give them the best chance of responding to treatment. Roche have a lot of kind of work ongoing to attack that from different ways. So a lot of the medicines that we have created are based at targeting certain subgroups of patients, and we are lucky in that we also have the diagnostics division, which allows us to kind of use those diagnostic tests to be able to identify subgroups as well.
It's fascinating.
Just to add to that, so I guess underpinning all of this is that everyone is completely unique. So when we study medicines, we typically group people and we test medicines on them, but there will be some people who will respond really well and some that won't. And so our mission is to try and find the best way of identifying people who will benefit most so that it reduces the risks of them taking something that may or may not benefit them in the future.
Brilliant. Why would you say medical innovation is so important?
I mean, basically, it allows us to make life-changing medicine. So if nobody was innovating, we wouldn't come up with anything new, and our kind of healthcare system would remain fairly static. So it allows us each scientist to kind of use their own ideas and their own skills to be able to drive the next developments in medicine.
Yeah, and I guess the other issue is that we're often working in areas where there's no textbook. We're working in diseases where there is nothing available, there is nothing for us to copy, and so we have to be innovative to try and meet those challenges and actually move things forward.
And Tom, I've seen that you were once working in physiotherapy but have switched over to clinical research. So how easy or tough was that for you to make that switch?
It's a good question. So weirdly enough, very straightforward. I think one of the myths that people have for certain science careers is that you have to have a very niche set of skills. And actually what we look for are transferable skills. People who can think innovatively, people who can tackle problems, and people who can communicate, as well as understand what patients need. And those are all skills and attributes that someone may have in an NHS career. And so it's very readily transferable into other careers outside of the NHS, such as working as a scientist in Roche.
And obviously there's lots of different people working here at Roche. What different paths would you say there are for someone who's more interested in science, for example?
There are probably hundreds of different roles that touch on science within Roche. So there's the obvious opportunities, people who work in labs, who wear coats like this. You know, we have people in the company who specialise in that, particularly in our diagnostics group. In the UK, in our pharmaceutical group, we tend to focus on more strategic roles. So the scientists that you see in our Welwyn Garden City site will typically be at a desk or in a meeting room having conversations, using their laptop, talking, thinking things through. So it's a very different image of science to perhaps people may be familiar with. But within those careers, we have people who specialise in designing clinical trials. We have people who specialise in actually delivering the trials, so setting up trial sites, collecting data. We have people like Nicola who specialise in analysing data. And we even have people whose role is really to communicate the value of the work that we do. So we have people who are fantastic writers and have really great creative skills, and we need them to be able to communicate some of the technical stuff so that people understand it. So it really is a broad range of roles that are available in the science world.
And to all of you guys, do you think that you necessarily need a degree qualification to get into the world of science anymore?
No, is a really simple answer of it, but going into it more, I do an apprenticeship scheme within Roche. So I'm in 3.5 years out of 4. So for me, I'm doing equivalent to A levels, so BTEC in engineering maintenance, as well as a HNC in electrical and electronics engineering. It's a lot of words.
It's a mouthful, yeah.
But the main thing behind it is not a degree. So for most people, a degree is not for everyone. And I think that's important for people to understand that if you want to do a degree and you know what you want to do, it's a good idea. But if you're really focused and you know what you want to do, there is other career pathways out there, such as apprenticeships, such as internships, to really open your eyes and get the experience and qualifications that you could get with doing a degree, but you're getting it quicker by doing it in other routes.
So there's many different pathways, basically.
Yeah. So I think to do my role, the kind of standard is that you probably need at least a master's degree, so some kind of postgraduate qualification. But I think Beth makes a really good point that within both any degree that you're doing, it's really important to try and get some on-the-job experience. So as part of my undergraduate degree, I did a placement year at Roche. And so that gave me over a year's experience in doing the job that I'm doing now, 8 years ago. So I think even if you do decide to go for a degree, it's still really important to get that kind of on-the-job experience where you can.
Yeah, and maybe I can just talk a bit about my experiences. So I'm involved in lots of hiring decisions right now, and the thing that makes me most excited when people come for interview is having different skill sets. They could have very obvious degrees and certain career pathways, but people that come with experience, with passion, and with skills that we want in the team, those are the people who we really want to hire because they offer something different to perhaps the more traditional view.
And Tom, what would you say your typical day is? Are you working on anything exciting at the moment?
This is not a typical day, I think it's fair to say. So the thing that I love most about my job is that we don't really have typical days. We have a very diverse workload and we have very diverse opportunities. So day to day looks very different. But there are usually some themes that I can talk about. So I work in a global role, and so most of my colleagues are either in the UK or more typically are in America or in Europe, in Canada, in China. And so a lot of our days are actually spent meeting with colleagues across the world through video conferencing or chat type interactions. So we have a lot of meetings to talk about strategies, to talk about problems and how we might solve them. The other part of my day-to-day role is usually developing deliverables. So if we're designing clinical trials, then we're working on protocols. It might be that we're looking at data that our statisticians have analysed and we're trying to make sense of it and write it up in a report. And another big element is actually what we do outside of the company. So we invest a lot of time talking to experts, so doctors and nurses who work with people with various health conditions, but more importantly with patients and advocacy groups to try and understand what's important to them and how we can help them better. So another big element of our day-to-day job is trying to communicate and share our work transparently with those individuals so that we can really help them in the future.
Okay. Wow, seems like you do quite a lot for the company, isn't it, Tom? So what would you say has been your biggest learning experience then working here, since you've done so much already? What would be like the main highlight?
So the thing that amazes me even every day I go to work is how passionate people are for the same mission. So no matter what your role, everybody is working to try and develop transformational medicines for patients. And that's something that amazes me every day, and it's something that motivates our colleagues, and you can see it in the effort and the passion that people put into the work that they do. So that's been the biggest learning for me, that although you may have a huge global business, everyone shares a similar passion.
So, Beth, what would you say your role at Roche is like? What's your journey been like getting here?
So for my role within Roche, I'm quite new to Roche, maybe compared to Tom and Nicole. I've only been here for 3.5 years. So my role in Roche is being a technical engineering apprentice. I started off going to college full-time for a year, kind of getting a background of knowledge and really building up my basics before coming to work for Roche, while still being employed by them. I spent a year on day release at college, completing my BTEC in engineering as well as my HNC, and the rest of the time I'm working out in the field with full-time engineers, different members of staff to really give me that background and that work experience, but also I'm learning the job at the same time, so at the end of it I can be employed as an engineer.
And how would you say engineering fits into the world of medicine and science?
Science is a really big word anyway.
Very broad.
Yeah, it's very broad spectrum of what it can and can't be. Engineering, from a Roche perspective, how it fits into science, the machines that we have, I mainly work on centralised solutions. So when you're getting a blood test done, it's taken by the phlebotomist or nurse, and it mainly gets sent to laboratories that will have our equipment in, and that blood test will go onto our equipment and it's fully automated. So it goes to a machine where it gets put on by a person or another part of the machine that's attached to it. It runs through the full machine. It gets sampled, so a little bit of blood is taken, mixed with some other bits of reagent or other liquids, and a test is performed. And at the end of that, that is the result that tells you what that patient may or may not need, what is the medicine bit where you can actually treat them and prevent stuff at the same time.
So it kind of gets to the main root of the problem.
Yeah.
And who or what would you say your biggest influence has been in choosing a career in science?
For me personally, I couldn't take more credit to probably some of my science teachers back at secondary school. They're a really big influence to me, having their passion and their courage, what in Roche we like to stick by anyway. So it's having that experimental feeling of like, yeah, I'm going to try something for the first time, and it's okay if I fail the first time because it's not a failure. It means I can go back and improve it the next time. As well as family members. A few of my family members are diabetic, so for me, being in a medicine and science career really is a good way for me to kind of link with them and feel like I'm helping someone that's close to my heart, rather than, I know every test is a patient, but I know at the end of the day I'm helping someone that's more important to me.
It's a good mindset.
I think the question that everyone out there is wanting me to ask: why did you choose an apprenticeship over, say, something like university, as many people will be there like at the moment studying right now?
For me, I have a quite complicated journey. So I did 3 years of A-levels. Mm-hmm. So most people do 2. I did 3 because I didn't know what to do. I put off university. I did A-levels in maths, physics, biology, further maths, as well as a BTEC in business studies. Wow. So I have a lot of qualifications because I didn't know what to do. I took on an apprenticeship in business administration as well. So I've had a big career change. And then I decided sitting at a desk is not for me. It's not for everyone. What was an okay decision to make at that time? So I found another apprenticeship in engineering. And I found Roche at the right moment, at the right time in my life. And I chose it because I always had in my heart a kind of feeling of like, I want to do something that changes people's lives. And everything that Roche sells as their core values really kind of sticks to me and goes, yeah, I've picked a job in engineering. Okay, I'm not a doctor, but I am an engineer, so I fix things, I make things right for people, and I'm saving someone's life by just doing a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit helps. Yeah, a little bit helps.
And would you say you're at any specific disadvantage because of that, or?
By not going to university, my main disadvantage would say I miss out on the social side when I saw my friends doing it. They had Freshers Week and stuff like that. But I'm in a big company, I'm meeting new people still. I still get that aspects of socialisation. We have team meetings, so I get to meet new people, and I really like that you can actually interact with different people. It's not a disadvantage. I think it's an encouraging step to kind of find your own feet and develop as a person in a different way.
So you're obviously, like you said, on the engineering side. So what's like a normal day for you, or for example the coolest thing you've ever done in like your 3 years here?
So an average day within Roche as an engineer, for an apprentice perspective, I shadow a lot of the engineers, so I'm watching them work. Mm-hmm. So their day to day is kind of the day before or the week before. They might find out where they're going for that day. They turn up on a site. So a site could be a hospital, it could be a private lab, it could be a research centre at university. We've got a broad spectrum of customers that have our equipment. We meet a customer, so we're meeting a different customer every day. So it's new people, new relationships you have to build, and then finding out what's wrong with the equipment, so fixing them. So it could be as simple as changing something for that day, but it's a lot of fault finding, it's a lot of hands-on experience, and just really making sure that machine's up to standards to what it should be.
So do you have any advice for those students out there who want to get a career in the science or engineering field?
I think any advice that anyone should have is do what you're passionate about. And if you're interested in something, don't be afraid to ask a company or look for a different company and ask for work experience, because sometimes you don't know what a career is until you walk through the door. I mean, for me, walking through the door of Roche when I had my interview, I didn't know what Roche was. No idea what the company was. And now I know it's a world leader in healthcare, and they do so much for everyone really. But investigate what the company is helps a lot, as well as don't be afraid to ask them if they do work experience, because sometimes they don't advertise it, but they're willing to do it as well.
That was great to hear from you, Beth, but we're moving on to Nicola. So how does a statistical scientist fit into the world of medicine?
So my background is in maths and statistics. I have a pure maths degree, and then I did a PhD in statistics. And my job role at Roche is really to ensure that the scientific questions we're asking in our clinical trials are the right ones. So designing the clinical trials such that we collect the right data, ask the right questions, planning the clinical trials so that we can effectively answer those questions as well, so that we don't have to kind of waste patients' time and resources, that we're asking it in the most efficient way possible, and then analysing the huge amount of data that comes out of a clinical trial to see at the end of the day whether the drug works or not, and whether it is safe for patients to take.
So, honestly, why Roche? Because there's so many companies you could have ended up working for. What made Roche stand out for you?
So I think I mentioned before that I did a placement year here as part of my undergraduate degree. And basically I just really enjoyed it. I had a really, really good year. You can tell that the people that you're working with are incredibly passionate about what they're doing, and we're making kind of groundbreaking medicines. So when I finished my PhD and I was looking at other companies, I did look at other pharma companies, but I think the disease areas and the kind of motivation that Roche has to develop new medicines is kind of second to none.
So you have many degrees, and how do you think that compares with an apprenticeship or more hands-on work when people are starting out in their career?
I think it just very much depends, as Beth said, on whether you know what you want to do or not. And so all I did was I just knew that I quite liked maths. That was my only kind of motivation. So I decided to do my undergrad in maths. And then as part of my maths degree, the part that I enjoyed the most was statistics and linking that to healthcare. And that's how I decided that as part of my PhD, that's what I would study. So I think it really just depends on if you know what you like and if you can funnel it down enough to maybe start an apprenticeship and get that experience earlier on, or actually if you need just a bit more broad training before you make that big decision. As I said, for my role, you tend to need a postgraduate degree, but there are plenty of roles within Roche and within healthcare where that's not the case.
And obviously, as a statistical scientist, you're going to be encountering a lot of numbers and a lot of statistics. Is that an everyday thing? Like, is it all about the numbers, or?
I mean, my role is quite a lot about the numbers, yeah. So certainly when you run a clinical trial, say you have 1,000 patients in a clinical trial, each of those is coming in for 25 clinic visits, and each time they do a clinic visit, you're asking them to fill out 20 different forms or 20 different questionnaires. That generates a lot of data. And so you have to be very, very familiar with looking at numbers, working out how to analyse them. But again, that is just my role. So I think there are plenty of roles where you could be looking at the scientific value of those numbers, where someone like me can come to you and say, well, this is what we think it means. What's your input on it? You don't have to be too much of a number cruncher.
And for all those students out there who say like maths or like science, but aren't quite sure where that can take them, what advice would you give to those people out there?
I think, again, follow what you enjoy. So there are some aspects of maths, for example, that I absolutely hated. So just because you don't like the whole subject doesn't mean that there isn't something in it for you. And just ask questions of people and research where people with maths degrees have gone. And I know that's easier said than done when you're in school, when you kind of don't have access to people. But there are lots of people with maths degrees who have gone on to do very un-mathsy things. So I guess don't think that it limits you, and just ask questions of people to find out what they've done with their degrees.
Good to hear. And so we're now moving on to the kind of stereotype-based things. So there are many stereotypes when it comes to scientists. You have coats, big goggles, looking through test tubes, mixing this and that. But is any of that actually true?
So as far as I'm aware, for me, not really. So this is the first time I've ever been in a lab. So it definitely isn't true that you kind of have to be in a lab the whole time doing test tube experiments. I think science takes on very different forms. And as Tom said, a lot of what we do is looking at it from a more kind of strategic level, working in kind of cross-functional teams. So with colleagues who are scientists, with colleagues who do work in labs, but also probably with far more who don't, and kind of bringing that all together.
There's also a stereotype that the science roles are very heavily male-dominated. But do you guys think that's true?
In my experience, no. So certainly within my own team, over half of the people are female, and I think that's also true for Roche in the UK and Roche globally. So over half of our managers are also women as well. So I think in terms of gender equality, Roche actually looks pretty good on that front.
Tom, what do you think about that?
So I think just in terms of broader diversity, so we also employ people from numerous different backgrounds and numerous different countries and cultures. So, for example, in the UK, of our roughly 2,200 employees, we have people from 53 different countries. So it just really emphasises how global we are, but also how much we value having diversity in our workforce.
So from an engineering perspective, it is predominantly, as you say, it's a male-dominated thing, but that's changing. There's more females getting into it, and it shouldn't be something that people are scared of because they think it's male-dominated. There's quite a lot of people in Roche in high positions that are females as well as males. As Nicole says, it's all about gender equality within Roche.
And I mean, science obviously might not be the coolest of subjects unless you're blowing something up. How do you guys think we could make it cooler for students?
Science is cool depending on what bit you want to look at. I mean, from Nicole's perspective, maths is cool and that fits into science. You've got the technology of all the equipment that we own. That's quite cool because there's different aspects you can fit into that. So there's building the equipment, there can be the IT side of it. There's the engineering side of science as well that most people don't think about because I've got to fix the machines, but it's interesting, it's diverse. I meet different people every day. I get to travel a bit around the UK to meet different people because the equipment is not focused in one bit. As well as science is what you make it. It can be as fun or cool as you want it to be. For Roche, I think it's all about saving people's lives and there's the next patient afterwards.
And Nicola, what do you think is like the coolest bit about working in the science industry?
I think it's probably the fact that, as cliche as it sounds, every day when you get up, you are making a difference to patients. So when you kind of get up on a Monday morning and you're like, oh, I really don't quite want to get out of bed, when you think about the fact that actually you're going into work to make a difference, it kind of is very motivating. And I think because everybody has that same kind of drive, it makes going into work quite fun.
Yeah, rather than getting up like, oh, I have to go to work again, got to sit at the same desk. It's nice to hear that people like love doing their jobs because I guess when you love your job, you're more into it. You want to do the best that you can, get the best product and best element. That's nice.
So Tom, obviously you've got people who they might enjoy science, but they might not be so wild about the technical side of it, the numbers and that. What advice would you have for them?
So I think it's keeping that open mind, as Nicola said. Science sounds like a small thing, but it affects everything we do in life. You know, every single medicine you take, every single public transport you use, every single mobile phone app, everything relates broadly to science. So I think it's important to keep an open mind, ask lots of questions, and I would really encourage people, if you know anybody or you speak to anybody, ask them about their role, ask them what it's like day to day, because you might be surprised at what they do and how that might meet the things that you're interested in. So yeah, I think that there is so much more to it than what meets the eye, and so ask lots of questions and keep an open mind.
Okay.
That's fantastic. Now, thank you for everyone for sending in their questions, but we only have time to read a few. So here is our first one. Does a job in research consist of long hours?
So definitely not at Roche. So I think their work comes in kind of peaks and troughs. There will be times where you've got a little bit less on and you maybe work a few less hours, and equally times when you're really busy and you maybe have to put in a couple more hours. But I don't think it is the case that kind of people are consistently working really long, crazy hours. I also think Roche have a very good policy for kind of flexible working, to allow you to work from home some of the time if your role allows, or move your hours around kind of other personal commitments that you may have. So it's definitely not overwhelmingly the case that everybody's working crazy hours.
So Beth, obviously this one applies to you. What would you say your favourite thing about being an apprentice is?
I believe it's kind of not quite proving people wrong, but young people can still do the job as well as other people. There's a lot of changes in the past few years where there's not so many young people in the role, so I feel like I can stand out as a young person, as well as I develop as a person, as an individual within my team. I get one-to-one training with different engineers. I get to build relationship with customers, what's going to help me at the end of my apprenticeship. So it's quite fun travelling around, meeting new people, and I know that everything I'm doing today is actually going to help in my job at the end, what really boosts kind of my unique selling point as a person.
And Tom, so we're in a lab now. Are all Roche jobs based in a laboratory?
Absolutely not, no. So of course we do have roles that are based in labs and you get to wear these great white coats, but a lot of our roles are actually based in offices or out in the field. We have people who go out and visit sites and engage with healthcare professionals, with patients, but a lot of our roles are based in our offices, and it involves interacting with other colleagues, sitting at a desk or in a meeting room or taking walking meetings. There's lots of exciting ways to do science outside of a lab. So yeah, there is a real diversity to the roles.
So Nicola, obviously you're the resident mathematician. Say someone loves science, but they're not good with the numbers. What advice would you have for them? Do you reckon they could still look forward to a career with Roche?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are some roles that depend on you being a little bit numeric. There are others that don't at all. And because we work in big teams with lots of people from different functions, you can kind of draw on each other's strengths and weaknesses. So if you know that you're a fantastic scientist but you hate the numbers part, then you've got your resident statistician to go and help, who can help you. So I definitely don't think it's a limiting factor, and maybe just will influence slightly what roles you'd be interested in.
So say if you're there and you have a problem, you just need to phone up Nicola, be like, I need help, Nicola. And say, for example, Tom, what would you say is your driving force to make you be in this world of science?
So this is going to sound a little cliched, but
Cliches are cliches for a reason.
okay, well, here it goes. So we all have health, whether it's good or bad, and actually having a good quality of life and being healthy is the most important thing that you could possibly have in your life. So to be able to work in an industry that helps people live high quality and happy lives is really important, and so that always drives me to want to work in the scientific field and specifically in a medicine field, because ultimately if we can help people lead better lives and healthier and happier lives, then we've done a good job. So it always gives me motivation to remember that, and know that my colleagues around me are also doing exactly the same thing.
So Beth, what benefits overall would you say are on offer to people for doing a Roche apprenticeship?
So with any apprenticeship, you kind of get the education part. So I'm being trained with my H&C, so I'm getting a qualification that is equivalent to a foundation degree, but also I'm being paid to do it. So I get some money at the end of the month and get paid to go to college, what is a nice benefit. And it's really appealing to the fact of I know when I'm going out to work, I'm being paid to do it. I'm not just there just because I have to be there. So it's a really nice benefit, as well as I get a company car because I do travel. I get other benefits of being a field service engineer, is like a phone and a laptop, because you need them to do your job. So they're really supportive of what you want to do, as well as within Roche they offer volunteer days, so I can use my volunteer days within reason of what I like to do. So I like to be involved with STEM, so I go out and talk to schools and other colleges about STEM careers and about apprenticeships. So my benefit from Roche with being an apprentice is I can really promote apprenticeships to other people, such as like today.
I mean, a lot of people, I feel like, now are getting into apprenticeships because there's not just this kind of one-minded mindset saying you need a degree, you need this, or you're not going to get anywhere. I feel like definitely people like you are helping the younger generation realize that, even if you don't want to go to uni, you can still get in the field that you want. And I think that's amazing what you guys are doing, helping everyone out. It's just really, really good. Thanks everyone for such an engaging session. It's been great learning about the science and medicine field, and also learning about what Roche does.
And hopefully this has inspired you guys to pursue a career in STEM, even here at Roche.
Don't forget to sign up to the Roche Talent Pool on SpringPod, where you can talk to ambassadors such as Beth, and even get scouted for a suitable role.
And of course, don't forget to follow both SpringPod and Roche on social media.
Get on it. Thank you, Roche, for hosting us today, and to all the viewers who tuned in.
And we will see you guys next time on SpringPod Live for another inspiring careers broadcast.